Lasers are fucking cool, right? Laser swords, laser traps, everyone loves them. I mean, just ask cats. Those guys have their priorities straight. There's just something so futuristic about them, and tons of science fiction movies, books, and shows include them because of that. Games, of course, are no exception. Portal, Cluster Chuck, Deus Ex, these games, and many more like them, all make use of lasers as challenges that also help convey the science fiction setting. But these games all share something in their depiction of lasers, something they don't actually share with real lasers. This big white beam in their center. Today, let's find out why. To illustrate this point about white centers, I want to give you an example from the game I'm currently working on. It too has a science fiction setting, so I, of course, wanted to add some laser obstacles for my players to avoid. I made a line, programmed it to adapt to the environment, getting shorter or longer depending on what it hit, and even used Unity's particles to create this awesome searing effect for where the laser hits the ground. But then came the visuals. I started with the obvious approach, give the red beam a red glow. But something just looked off about them. They looked unrealistic somehow, which is impressive considering the game is literally about pulling yourself around with black holes. Wishlisted on Steam, by the way. I looked at examples of lasers in similar games, and discovered what I talked about in the intro. Almost every time there are lasers in a game, they have that signature white core. Incredibly, once I changed mine to have it too, they suddenly looked perfect. That one unintuitive change made my lasers go from looking like big red glow sticks to looking like actual laser beams, like from all these other amazing games. But why do lasers not look like lasers unless they have this feature? It doesn't make sense. In real life, an important characteristic of lasers is that they're monochromatic, meaning they only have one color, so they certainly don't have this thick white bar going through their center. To find the answer to this question, I'd like to go back to one of, if not the earliest appearance of lasers in a color movie. The classic sci-fi film, The War of the Worlds. In this movie, aliens use these massive laser beams to absolutely ruin this guy's day. The beams in this movie look almost nothing like real lasers. They have these sparks flying out of them, they're very thick, and don't seem concentrated at all, and most importantly for us, they include this big white center. To understand why director Brian Haskin chose to include this, we have to understand the limitations of special effects back when this movie was made in 1953. To make these laser effects, Haskin and his special effects team combined a few different techniques that were very popular at the time, namely using different videos recorded on film and layering or superimposing them on top of one another, allowing effects created separately to be pasted onto the environment. But what did they actually film in real life to use for these beams? Bob Burns, a film historian, explains that they used acetylene torches, aligned with where the ray had to shoot out from on the screen, and blew the flames with a fan to create a sort of flamethrower.
When they fired the ray, they took an acetylene torch against black and with a fan, and they would match it up to where the ship was supposed to be or the Cobra head was supposed to be, and they would hit the acetylene with a fan and blow it out, and that's what you saw when that ray came out.
And when we look at the color of the flames that acetylene torches produce, we see that signature white beam with an orange-red glow around it. Now, as one of the first appearances of a laser in color film, this might already be enough to show that after decades of science fiction taking inspiration from earlier works, we've gotten so used to this visual representation of lasers to the point that it doesn't look right otherwise. But it goes deeper than that. When doing research for this video, I discovered that the first functional laser ever was built in 1960, 7 years after the War of the Worlds came out. This shows that from before lasers even existed, we've been conditioned to recognize this version of them as laser. If you look at the history of science fiction media, this really does check out. Lightsabers in Star Wars, beams in Tron, and ship weapons in The Last Starfighter are all examples of these white cored lasers. It's easy to see how once people got used to this look, other movies adopted it too, and games followed suit. Today, if lasers don't look like that in your game, it'll be noticeable and will ironically take away from the player's immersion, even though it's technically more realistic. An interesting note is that sometimes extremely high-powered lasers can have a bit of white coloration in their beams, for many different reasons, like the variation in light intensity in different parts of the beam, different materials the beam is passing through in order to be visible, and more. It's important to mention though, this white coloration is almost never as pronounced as it is in these games and movies, which is why I don't really think it's a justification for why lasers almost always look that way in media. Okay, so now that we know why this is the right look for lasers in games, let's get back to how I implemented them in Singularium. The lasers are the primary obstacle in the sci-fi zone of the game, where the levels are trying to make you feel boxed in, almost claustrophobic. If you don't play perfectly, nailing every twist and turn, you'll fail the level, or if you do beat it, you'll get a very bad time. I used the lasers in my level design to accentuate this feeling. I lined certain walls with lasers, or placed them in the center of the corridor, confining your movement to a smaller area than you might expect. I use moving lasers to keep players on their toes, making them weave through moving laser fields, which both adds to the claustrophobia and makes you feel like you're in a heist movie. Overall, the lasers add a ton of depth and possibilities to the kinds of levels I can make in this zone, plus they elevate the difficulty for the playtesters who found the game too easy. Speaking of playtesters, did you know that if you sign up for my Patreon, you get exclusive access to early playtest builds of the game? If you think the game looks interesting and you want to support me, consider heading over there and becoming a patron. It's a massive help to me, and you get some pretty great perks in return. If you can't or don't want to support me on Patreon, but you still want to join the game's community, please join the Discord. We give suggestions, make memes, and draw art over there. It's a blast. Links for both the Patreon page and Discord server will be in the description. I also finally added a medal system to the game. Depending on how fast you beat a level, you'll get a different medal, bronze, silver, or gold, plus a secret medal for beating my developer times. To progress through the game, you'll need a certain number of gold or silver medals, forcing players to really get into that speedrunning mindset of optimizing their runs on each level. Thanks for watching. Today was a different type of video than my usual devlogs, but I had a lot of fun doing the research for it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Please leave a comment about what you thought about this new format, plus any suggestions you might have for the game. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, wishlist my game Singularium on Steam. Until next time, see ya. I want to give a massive thank you to all my patrons, No_, Sewerman, Logic Tom, Blitzer, Chris Young, Spotty the Turtle, and Spygun21.